Okay. It looks like we should be alive right now.
I'll double check it. I can see live on my screen.
You can.
And they can all see me. Just looked on somebody's phone, and it looks like it's live. All right.
Perfect. All right.
There we go. They're all showing me my face.
That's right.
So, I believe you have a question for us first, or a little game.
I do have a little game for you. Okay, so this is a game of who is most likely to do whatever it is I answer. Or ask. You answer. I ask. Okay? All right. Out of the four of you, who is most likely to challenge a gypsy to scarf dancing?
I'd pick Tristan on that one. And you guys will have to know I went to a lot of parties with him in the past. So,
have you ever seen me dance at any of those parties?
Well,
not that you remember.
Not that you remember. Look where you lived at Penzic half the time.
Well, this is true.
Okay.
Well, I would totally do it, but I would never refer to them using the word.
So wait,
gypsy,
yeah, that's true. But if we go to the Middle Eastern side, I did see Eli in a Middle Eastern women's dress run a drag race.
Actually, it was the charity drag race, and I was dressed as a geisha.
Oh, that's right.
I came in dead last in the foot race part of it, but I won Miss Congeniality.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of
tiny little steps.
Yeah, Duke Valharic was the Middle Eastern girl.
Yep.
All right, what's the next one?
Next question. Who out of the four of you cried when Mufasa died?
Who's Mufasa?
What?
Definitely not Tristan.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
You know, in The Lion King, Mufasa.
Oh, right. Like, I think I saw that.
I don't remember specifically, but I'm not afraid to cry.
I know. I was gonna say you look like a sensitive type, so
I'm not afraid to cry. I'm a big man. I can cry.
I would have if it didn't remind me, if it didn't feel like a remake of Bambi in some ways at that point. So it pulled me out of the story because I was analyzing the filmmaking technique at that point.
Yeah, you also have to realize. Yeah, but Uncle Walt is a serial killer. I mean, Old Yeller, Bambi. I mean, he's a mass murderer. Everybody knows that.
All right, what's our next question?
Coming from the sensitive guy.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, the next one and final one. Right now, out of the four of you, who is plotting revenge?
Well, that'd be hard to pick. All these are gentlemen, so I would say that they're clear standout.
I don't believe in revenge. I do believe in justice.
Amen to that.
Justice is sometimes sharper in its punishment than vengeance or revenge, but it is only aimed at the malefactor, not in vengeance or vendetta in the Italian, aimed at their family, their friends, for 7 generations. So I believe in justice, and I hope that I'm always working for justice, but never working for revenge.
I like that.
That was a really good answer.
I know. I could have never said it. So.
I know.
That's why we hired that guy.
That's why we're paying him so much.
Well, that is a perfect segue then.
All right.
To our introduction.
All right. So I'm going to cover the introductions. I'm going to start with who am I? I am Duke Brannos out of the Middle Kingdom. I've had the lucky SCA career of spending 30 some years actually teaching, educating, and coaching people from all around the known world. I've had wonderful groups invite me out to places all over North America, Europe, and even probably one of my best trips was Australia. Just in case I didn't say it, I am from the Middle Kingdom. And hopefully I've traveled to most of the wars. There's a couple I'd still like to make, and still very active and enjoying the SCA like I'm sure all of us are. So The other folks in the conversation that will have pieces of this conversation is Duke Sean, and I think probably lots of people know Duke Sean as well. I had the pleasure to teach with him when we did both did the Known World Rattan Symposium in Calontir, and we got the chance to meet each other, talk, and really become friends there, and had a chance to create that friendship and talk through the next 30 years after that. So Ben are probably not quite 30, probably 25. So, you don't need to say much about Sean. He has his background is, obviously very deep with very great SCA people in it that helped him along his way, and he's left his path on so many others that have now blazing their own ways. So look forward to his conversation. Duke Eliahu, he's a university professor. That's why we actually joined him as part of the team here, so we can talk a little bit about teaching on more of a professional level. And he's very educated, as if you were already joined and listened to him, I think everybody can attest to how he speaks and is eloquent. He's been knighted since 1983. Sean's been knighted since 1987. So we have a lot of years of people knighted here and participating in the SCA. Our last person is Count Tristan. Tristan was knighted in 1996, about 3 years after me, and he was, at the time, it was mid-realm. There is now a Northshield. He's Count of Northshield. In the last 10 years, he's opened a dojo and been experienced building his own dojo, his own practice, and really committing to the Eastern martial arts philosophy. And I look forward to hearing all the great stuff he has as well. Hopefully we give you guys some stuff to think about. We're going to ask for questions and hopefully be able to answer a few questions. Each one of us could talk for days, and some of you probably heard us talk for days. So if there's more interest later, we'll happily break these sessions out into more time so we get more depth. And please let us know. All of us are here, we've been here, and we really, really enjoy people's input and being able to help. I've asked all of them if they minded anybody contacting them privately. And every one of them was like, absolutely, yes, please reach out if you have questions so that they can answer them. And of course, that goes for me as well. I'm constantly trying to help folks on Facebook as well. So I think we'll start with Sean. He's going to be covering. Let's see, I had it written down. Training methodology, kind of a basic guideline. He wrote this. He lives by this and presents this a lot. But I think it's really fundamental. So I hope you guys enjoy. And please keep the questions coming. Vesper has been nice enough to interject and throw your questions out to us, and we'll answer them as they come.
Greetings, all. I am Duke Sean from Artemesia. As Brannos mentioned, I have traveled extensively to teach my fighting clinic, and one of the things that I focus on pretty heavily, and I'm not at all ashamed to say that the one thing that I'm trying to change about our sport is the way we teach our sport. For the longest time, the training methodology that we used in our sport as it developed, as we were kind of making things up as we go along, it's been this smash and bash training methodology where you just put people into armor and you assume that they're going to figure it out. And I know that's not the way it's been for everybody, but that is a training process that is pretty prevalent in our sport. And I've tried to change the way we're teaching our sport, not so much the content or what you're learning from a particular trainer, but the training method that we do to do that. So rather than just putting people in armor, my primary training philosophy can be described as isolating and eliminating deficiencies. And that means we're going to find out what is wrong with your fight. And then we are going to put you through a training process to eliminate those deficiencies and to cut out what is wrong about it and make you better through an actual process. When I say we're going to be isolating deficiencies and we're going to find out what's wrong with your fight, keep in mind, I'm not trying to tell people that, I'm not here to tell you that you're an awful fighter. But the fact is that we learn more from our failures than we do our successes. And by isolating those deficiencies and finding out finding the failures, we can fix those things and we can address those. And I am always working under the assumption that there is something wrong with your fight. Because there has to be, because if there's not something wrong with your fight, then you're a perfect and complete fighter and you don't need us and we don't need you. So we're going to find out what's wrong with your fight and we're going to fix it. So part of identifying those deficiencies and isolating those is welcoming and embracing the fact that you have failures and addressing those and using those as a starting point for what you can fix and the things that you can make better. So, a key component of that and embracing the deficiencies is to do what I refer to as redefining your victory conditions. What that means is you need to evaluate what it means for you to have a successful fighting session. If you go to a tournament and the only measure of success you have is to win the tournament, if that's the only way that you can consider your tournament to be a success, you are going to be grossly disappointed a vast majority of the times when that happens. Only one person can win the list, and the reality is, in most cases, it's not going to be you. So, success is always better than failure, but failure is a fact, and it's what you do with that information and what you do with that fact that is going to determine your path forward. And the process that we use for that is in any learning endeavor that we have, whether it's fighting or band or any learning endeavor you have, anything you want to get better at, there's basically 3 different phases to learning, and that is training, practice, and evaluation. If you think about this as a college math course, you go to class and the instructor will put up a problem, an equation on the board, and he will go through the instructions. He'll go through the process for solving that equation, and they will show you what that process is. And this is where you're teaching something. This is where you're being taught how to do the thing. And you can ask questions to clarify any points on that, but they are available right there for you to do it, and they're showing you how to do the thing. Then you have practice, which is where you will go home. You'll have a textbook. You'll probably have answers, access to the answers to make sure that you arrive to the correct conclusions. And you go through the process of doing several of these problems without the aid of the instructor being right there telling you how to do it. And this is where you do the work on your own. And then you'll come back to class. You'll have an evaluation. You will have say a midterm. And when you get that midterm, when you get the answers back, presuming that you have not aced the test and you didn't get all the questions wrong, you will notice that when you look at those questions, you're going to immediately zoom in on the questions that you got wrong rather than ones you got right. Again, we learn more from our failures than we do our successes. The questions that you got right, success we take as the natural order of things. You're supposed to get it right, and when you do get that answer right, you're not gonna look at that because it doesn't highlight a deficiency. And it's getting that evaluation. That's how we identify those deficiencies, so we can know what to work on next, so we can go back to the training and we can go back to the practice and we can go back to the evaluation. And ideally, when you, again, with this analogy with the college class, when you get to the finals, you have made progress enough on the things you were deficient on in your midterm that those are no longer a problem. You may have other problems, you may have other deficiencies, but you've made progress on those. And that's the very short version of the overall training philosophy that I work on. To summarize it all succinctly, it is isolating and eliminating deficiencies, redefining your victory conditions, and fixing those deficiencies through a process of training, practice, and evaluation. This is a process that I've been working with for at least 15 years, and the process itself is absolutely proven. You can say whatever you want about fighting style. I'm not concerned about what you're learning. I'm concerned about how you're learning it, and this is a process that absolutely works. So that's the gist of what I've got going on. So I think we're going to be going on to, I think Brannos is next. Is that right?
Uh,
So
I,
no, the next, do you have any questions, Vesper?
as of right now, it looks like we are calm for the
Awesome.
moment. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. And if people want to, of course, save questions for the end, that we're more than welcome, and each person will answer them as those come by. So I think the next one is going to be His Grace Eliahu.
Okay. Thank you. As Brannos mentioned, I teach at the university. I've been teaching actually taught at 6 colleges and universities in 3 different states. Before that, I was a practitioner in advertising, and now I teach. And I've taught design, advertising, marketing, communication, a variety of related subjects. And the process that His Grace Sean spoke about is as a skill building process. I've used a very similar kind of process in skill building. Initially, in the way I structure classes now in a more formal educational setting, is that the beginning of the class is building certain skills, and the later part of the class is combining those skills and applying those to situations. So, for example, if an early quiz might be terms and definitions, then there might be what you would do in certain situations, and then finally how you solve certain problems. And that's building through a course of study, through a really structured course of study, from understanding through skill building through application. The principle is that really first your mind has to understand it before you can execute it. And there's always a lag. First the mind understands, then the body or the effort matches up to that. And so I think of something that Pablo Picasso said, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. And I think that that's true. You have to master the process in order to eventually go beyond the limitations of that, to be not only to build, there's certain repetition necessary for skill building to achieve something called automaticity, where certain things come automatically and you no longer have to consciously think about them, but you can simply do them. And then you're not only fluent, but you can also be flexible in what you do. So when I structure courses, there's a concept I think about called learning styles. And this is something when I was getting certified in education that we were taught. This is how students learn. They're either auditory, kinesthetic, or visual. What they hear, what they do physically, or what they see. And there's been a lot of research about these learning styles, and current research doesn't really validate them, but they're still useful in terms of teaching approach. And I still refer to those. Plus there are others. Is someone social, or a social learner, or a solitary learner? Are they logical, or are they emotional, cognitive, or affect? Which is more important? And so in designing instruction, I don't think about how the student needs to learn, because I can't evaluate them when I'm dealing with a classroom of people. That evaluation that Duke Sean was talking about really occurs, if I understand correctly, he's talking about doing it on a one-on-one basis. I can't do that given the a formal classroom setting. So I combine every possible approach to illuminate the information to help a student gain their own understanding, so eventually they can put together the information and integrate it into their own understanding. And so multiple types of access for students. When you're working with a student individually, sometimes it can become clear that they need a different kind of explanation than the one you're giving. And then a teacher has to be flexible and imaginative in finding a different way of illuminating it, illuminating the subject. I often think of taking a student into a dark room, and there's an object in the center of the dark room, and I'm shining a light on it, and they get a snapshot of it from one point of view, and then I walk around to another part of the room and keep doing that until they gain a 360-degree picture of it, until eventually they understand, they comprehend, and they can recreate it. And I think of the old saying, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. I've added to that, I teach and I start to master the subject. And so I encourage students in the SCA and the university to actually teach other students how to do something, because that helps them gain the knowledge, internalize the knowledge in a significant way. I think one of the other challenges that I face in the university that I have to work on is something that has been formed by teaching in the SCA, is connecting the current lesson to the previous ones. Because I know a lot of students in the university setting seem to consider each course as a standalone and not consider all the information that came before. I'm done with that course, forget about it, now I'm on to the next thing. And whereas all the faculty thinks that the students' education is cumulative, it's building one thing on another. And that's something in the SCA that I've applied, and something I go back to in the university. So for example, in an SCA setting, I'll explain a concept to someone in depth in fighting, show them how to do it, repeat it with them, because repetition is essential. Repeat it with them until they get it correctly, then have them do it, have them explain it, give me feedback, and then reduce all of that in-depth explanation to like a single word. Feet, meaning their feet has to be in a certain position. I've explained this to them. And I'll move on to another skill, but when they're working on that next skill, they may forget the first one. All I have to do now is say feet, and they remember to correct their foot position while they're learning this other skill. So designing the instruction to be cumulative in nature and additive is a real challenge. Now, most students in the SCA, most students of fighting in the SCA are not entering into a defined course of instruction. They are seeing lots of different instructors at practice, or their practice is unstructured. This is a problem I think that Sean correctly identified, and one that all of us, I think, talking about this have been trying to deal with. I have had students over the years, squires, who said, I don't know I want to improve, I don't know where to start, and let me rebuild them from the beginning and say, you have to forget what you knew, and I'm starting you over, and we are now building in this cumulative way. But that's been the exception. More often than not, there's somebody, I see somebody at an event and they say, hey, can you work with me? Can you show me something? And then that kind of teaching moment is a different teaching moment. So in addition to the idealized version of instruction, we have to also recognize the context. If somebody comes up to me, can you show me what I'm doing, what to work on? I only have a few minutes to pick out a thing, a deficiency usually, and say, here's what I see. Now, here's how to fix that. Okay, now fix it. Now go back to the way you were doing it before. Now go back to the way I'm showing you. Can you feel the difference? Okay, now repeat back to me. So I'm trying to cram this feedback of instruction into a very short amount of time. And I'd say the final piece of that is an analogy I make to a master woodworker who gives his apprentices all the best tools and a pile of wood. And if the apprentice takes the bag of tools and simply dumps it on the pile of wood, he hasn't built anything. Ideally, what mastery is you've mastered the tools in such a way that you can use them in the right order, in the right sequence, in the right way to create something, and that's the beginning of mastery. And that's what I look for in my students, whether in the university or in the SCA. Have they mastered the tools? Have they mastered the process? Are they combining it all and creating something original and new?
Thank you, Your Grace. I
You're
think
welcome.
that was very good. Vesper, do we have any questions out there?
We actually have questions if we want to backtrack for a moment.
That's fine. Sure.
All right, so Duke Sean, I'm going to bring you up on the screen. All right, so a couple questions for you as other questions are coming in. The first, what are some good victory conditions?
Okay, so again, with victory conditions, you have to you have to understand, what do you consider to be a success for your fighting experience? What has to happen in order for your fighting experience to be a success? And again, as when we mentioned tournament, if the only measure of success you have is winning the tournament, then you're going to be disappointed a lot of the times. Sometimes, depending on the list that you're in, if you've been fighting for a while, maybe going more than maybe going more than 2 rounds in a double elimination, maybe that's a victory condition. The ultimate measure of success, keep in mind that ours is definitely a sport where success is largely determined by one single common variable, and that is body count. But the body count is the focus on body count is counterproductive to actually learning the sport. If that's what you're focused on, then you're gonna be concerned about your wins and your losses, and you're not going to be able to appreciate being able to isolate deficiencies. So body count is not really, it's how we measure things, but it's not the best. That's not the best focus for learning. The best measurement of success and victory is just making progress and being a better fighter than you were the last time you came out. And sometimes that success does not translate into body count. That doesn't translate necessarily to victories. But if you have somebody you're working with that is watching your fights, and maybe last time you had a problem with footwork, and now you enter a similar tournament, and now your footwork is better, but you have a problem with shield discipline. That's progress. That's victory. And frankly, some days when you're just not feeling it, some days victory is just getting to practice at all and putting the armor on and just getting to it. So you can measure it however you want. And finding those small victories, when you have some success at a smaller level, that builds your confidence, and it makes you think that there's value to what you're doing, and that you can keep having greater victories after that. Because small victories lead to bigger victories.
Okay.
So,
Great. And we also
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just to add to that from personal experience, about 20 years ago now, I think I undertook to completely change the way I was fighting, because what I had done that had worked was no longer current, and it was no longer effective. And as I was trying to change what my automatic reactions were, and that took a lot of effort, I'd be fighting with someone, I'd be sparring, I'd be working on a very specific thing, and I would get frustrated and I would just kill them. I would just beat them. But I'd beat them using something old and not using the new skills I was trying to do. And for me, that win was a loss because I lost patience and I lost focus and I lost the intention of what I was practicing, which was to learn to do a specific thing in a specific way. And I simply relied on using something I knew would win, but the win was for me actually a loss.
Right, because you didn't become a better fighter.
Right.
You won a fight, but you didn't become a better fighter.
Right.
And that's a loss.
Yes.
That's failure.
Yes.
All right, guys, I
got better.
Yes, you did. Thank goodness. It was a pleasure to be able to kind of be around to watch all of that happen, and you compete at a whole different level than I've ever seen you compete at.
Thank you.
So that's where. Do you have any other quick question? We'll take one more before we can get His Excellency Tristan.
Sure, we have one quick question. Essentially, I'm just going to kind of shorten it, truncate it a little bit.
That's fine.
If we are doing something successfully, and therefore we're not reevaluating it because we're successful, do you believe that we teach poorly because we aren't reevaluating things that we do successfully?
So can I cover that one a little bit, guys, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
The key to, I think, all of what we're all looking for is we get through learning something, and we're constantly evaluating if that thing we learned is still being done right or could be done better. I think all the great fighters out there learn so many things. In fact, I used to throw tons more shots than I do now, because what I've learned to do is throw the basic shots that much better. I think what his grace Eliahu talked about was the mastering of something. We are constantly trying to master something. You can call yourself a master of woodwork, or you can call yourself a master, but that doesn't mean it's the end. It's a constant. We're constantly striving for it. Now, that doesn't mean that we spend all our time on that. That means that we have to move on, and we have to create. Sometimes we have to even create new things for ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to broaden what we have. We have to watch other things. Like I do a lot of, Eastern European boxing footwork and tension control and breath and all of these pieces to become a better fighter all the time. But we have to constantly go back and say, I'll look at a win, and I'll look and go, man, that was absolutely terrible. I have no clue why my feet were that way. That's not a win for me because I performed poorly. You do have to be careful on not, constantly looking at things that you do always wrong, because that's a bad thing. That goes back to what Sean says. But reevaluating, there is nothing wrong with that. You shouldn't dwell on it. You should get your basic foot underneath you, move on to something else, and constantly look back and say, am I still doing this well? And then move on again, and am I still doing all these things well? And we just keep moving on. Talking about moving on, we're going to move on right to His Excellency Tristan here. And just so everybody knows, again, please feel free to reach out to any of these people and ask these questions if they don't get answered here. We really do want to answer everybody's. We want to make everybody better fighters, but even more so, we want to make everybody better trainers and better partners for people at their fight practice. All right, Your Excellency.
Thank you. I want to make one minor correction, and that is I'm a Viscount, not a full count.
Oh, sorry.
So I kind of not count, but thank you very much for the introduction. I know a lot of people don't know who I am. I've not been really active in the SCA for some time now, but when I was active in the SCA, I was in a household. At our biggest, I think we had 23 members. Out of that, we had 7 knights, 5 royal peers that came out of that group. And I only say that because really what we'd created, what's referred to as a talent hotbed. Like, how do you get a group of people that help each other out to become better? Like, the culture of that group winds up becoming better. And what I discovered within the SCA that I took into my martial arts training as a dojo instructor was that same culture. Like, how do you take the spark, which is the interest of the student, and fan it into a flame? And that's a very delicate process. And it, in taking this to the traditional Eastern side, I teach Aikido, by the way, is the art that I teach in my dojo. There's a concept called Shu Ha Ri, and this describes 3 tiers of learning. In Shu, and I'm sure everybody in the SCA can relate to this. In Shu, imagine is the beginning level when somebody comes to their first practice and they're like a sponge. They don't know anything of what's going on, and they just want to be taught, like, how do I hold a shield? How do I throw a basic shot? Their mind is completely open, and they want to learn how to make one thing succeed. And this is where connecting to a student like that is really important. And what I found as an instructor, kind of in the SCA, or a coach, I guess a mentor, you could use that term, is it was easy to lack connection between you, the experienced person, and the brand new person who just didn't even know the language you were speaking, could not relate or understand the kind of the intricate vocabulary that fighters tend to have. And so to make that connection really effective for a mentor, you have to appreciate, where is the person that you're talking to, that you're trying to teach, where are they at? And you have to give them exactly what they need at that time, no matter how simple it is to you, and maybe even boring to you because you learned it and absorbed it long time ago and moved on. But that's what they need. And that's where you're going to establish that connection. And you can do it one-on-one, you can do it with a group, but it's usually, even with the group, you're doing a bunch of one-on-one connections where you're trying to help each other for where the learner is at. So that initial layer is called Shu, and that means to protect. And that means that the technique that they're learning, they just want to learn that one technique and have it, get it down and get used to it. Then you have Ha in the middle, and that's where you could equate this in the SCA to, say, a mid-level fighter like a squire. He already has got a number of basic offense and defensive capabilities. He's got some movement, got a few shots or combinations that he likes, but he's still served really well by having one instructor. The one thing about the Shu level, at the entry level, that beginner, if he has 2 instructors trying to teach him at the same time, his brain's going to explode, much less 3 or 4. There really needs to be one stable source of instruction for that person to really do the best, be able to learn at a good rate. And then as more experience comes in, you get to the exploration level, which is the Ha level, where they have some comfort, have some competence, and now they want to start branching out. Maybe they get a little bit of mentoring from other knights or other fighters. They start branching out a little bit more, and they start the very beginnings of making their own style and their own art. And then once they get that kind of comfortable there, then you get to Ri, and that's that highest level of, I hate to use the term mastery, because mastery, people tend to think of it being like, okay, I'm done, I know everything there is to know. Really what it means is you truly walk your own path. You are no longer beholden to a single instructor or to a single school of fighting or whatever your martial art is. You really are gathering what you find to be the most useful things for you. And I relate that to what Bruce Lee talked about, of absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and keep what is uniquely your own. Like, that is the level of Ri. Now, this language is used in the Eastern arts. I sort of viewed this as I watched the development of many fighters, including myself, where each of those tiers was physical, and then mental, and then spiritual at the top. And you could see somebody learning to play guitar or piano go through the same thing, where in the beginning they're just trying to get down the mechanical movements to get sort of close to what music is. And then they start, once they get the physical aspect down, then they realize, oh, there's a layer of strategy in here. I'm learning the music theory. And within fighting, we're learning, okay, what about the mental game? How do we analyze our opponent? How do we start figuring out our plan for how we're going to take them down, how we're not going to fall for their best shots and whatnot? Like, that's the mental layer. In order to get to the mental layer, you have to be able to ignore and let go of the physical layer. If you're obsessed about which foot is forward and where your hand is placed and what angle your sword is at, you're not going to be able to go into the mental and dwell there. Then once you get comfortable with the mental layer, the next thing is to leave that behind, let it go, and go to the spiritual. And this is where you don't think, you don't plan. I equate this to what Musashi referred to as the void. When there is no agenda, there's no plan, you just merely act on what you see and you express yourself. And I guess that's where Bruce Lee would say martial arts is expressing yourself 100%. And so to me, that spiritual layer is where that void is. I've tasted a little bit of it, but I admit that is the hardest transition to make from that mental strata to the spiritual. And I don't use spiritual in terms of like religious. I'm talking that it is kind of what Duke Eli was talking about, where it's just natural. You just naturally know what to do. You don't think about it. You just express it. And so I think these three layers are very helpful for a coach or an instructor or anybody. They're going to mentor somebody for 10 minutes. Get a basic idea of where they're at and go to the level that they are and take them just a little bit higher. Like, to me, that's where the effective mentoring came in. And Brannos has been an avatar for me, an example for many, many years. There's nobody, in my opinion, that does it better than he does. And I always wanted to have that same level of skill. So I put my mind to building that. And the people that I work with, you see them start to get those light bulb moments.
Looked like we got a little freeze going on there.
It looks like we lost
Just
him.
no-
Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
there we go. You're back. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I? Okay.
Yeah, just for a second you froze. You're fine.
Okay. So that's pretty much what I have.
All right. Do we have any quick questions?
We do.
Awesome.
We have a question. When I am fighting someone less experienced than myself, I automatically go into instruction mode.
Yep.
Do you see any dangers with me doing that, since I'm only a mid-range fighter? For example, I might instill incorrect habits in the less experienced fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say yes, there is a bit of danger with that, if only the fact that you may come off as arrogant. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to teach people. Absolutely, it's generous. You're generous of heart to want to teach them. Just make sure that you can set the expectation with them that they don't feel that you are being condescending to them. There are a lot of different ways to do it. We can go into a little bit of detail at maybe a later point, but I've been to that in that same position many times. And kudos to you for just not unleashing everything that you can do and annihilating them right off the bat, because this is the SCA. People are into the SCA to have a good time, not to just get blown out of the water. And there are ways to bring out their best fight. And that's the way that I would think about this, is as an opponent, especially when you're not in a crown tournament, not in a high stakes type of a situation, you do have a bit of an obligation to help bring the best fight out of that person. And many different ways to do that. In fact, I'd love to hear from each of the other people on here and how they do that same thing, because every single bout, whether it's practice or in a real tournament or on a melee field, it's not only a practice, but it's the real thing, because we don't actually die. We keep coming back. So every time you learn, and I think Sean would agree with me on this one, is that every single pass that you do, no matter what, is a learning opportunity. So if you view that your opponent who is of lesser skill, make that a learning opportunity for them. There's many ways to do that.
I can add something.
Yeah, go ahead and make it quick.
So just quickly, this is Bella, by the way, who has joined.
The better side?
Yeah. When my squires have gone to a a large event like what in the Mid-Realm is called a Tournament of Chivalry, where a lot of knights are there and they're each open to training and teaching bouts with individuals. They, because of that situation, getting a lot of instruction from a lot of different people, what I have told them is to take notes. When after you get some training from anyone other than me, I'm not saying it's bad, but write it down so I can help you understand it and put it in the context of what we're working on and the level you're at, so that you can use it, incorporate it, so it's not confusing to you. Because otherwise you'll get lots of different information, many voices, and that can be a problem.
All right, thank you guys. And I'm sure there's a lot more questions out there. And I'd like to once again just extend a big thank you for everybody listening, because I think everybody really wants to help folks. And hopefully all three of these gentlemen gave some good ideas on not only how to help them or how to think about it, but you know, how maybe brought more questions and more things to mind. We'd love to hear some feedback from everybody, because we'd love to go in depth on a lot more of this stuff. So my part of this, other than being the person talking a lot, is really that emotional piece. I had the pleasure of starting with Tristan and Sean, and we've been trying to talk about how can we. We've helped a lot of people become better. We've taught a lot of people. We trained, we coached a lot of people. But how can we help people start practices better, build a better practice, build a training philosophy, help others easier? Because we don't talk a lot about train to trainer or train to coach. And I think this is the biggest piece we wanted to get to, and we've been talking for the last couple of months about. And you know, we'd be happy to sit around and talk with each other, because we have really some good insights, and I've learned a lot from all three of these gentlemen. But on my end, I've had the pleasure of teaching and lots of nights in my own group in multiple kingdoms. I tend to fall onto the emotional side, and that emotional side of teaching comes a lot from empathy, really, from myself. It's the one thing I tend to be very sensitive of. But knowing how a person's feeling when they're fighting you, how if they need that positive reinforcement, doesn't even need to be a blow to hit you. It needs to be something that lets them believe that and build that confidence that what they did was right. Some others you need to take a look and say, what the heck did you just do? That's not, you know, obviously, you know, that's wrong. If you're just going to keep doing it that way, then, you know, maybe we need to start back at square one. And sometimes that's the real sharp note, but sometimes those sharp notes are what help people think about what they're doing and bring them back into the path of learning and moving forward. Most of my training comes a lot from discipline, but really the biggest piece here is I don't necessarily think of myself as a trainer. I think there are probably lots of better trainers than I am out there, because they teach fundamentals almost even better than I do. I tend to get a little complex in the ways I teach things. But coaching is a whole different animal when we look at training somebody. You know, and coaching, it don't need to be, you know, there's lots of boxing coaches that don't train people how to punch or how to weight lift or how to eat better. They have trainers for that. But they know their student. They know when they're not giving it at all. They know what they can do and take advantage of an opponent in the ring. And this is what they're giving them in the corner. They're giving them that positive or negative reinforcement to drive them to a different level. And really, that's where we're all trying to get. We're trying to get to this level that's so that epic place where everybody wants to get to. And it's hard to get there by yourself sometimes. It's a long struggle. But when you have somebody alongside you that you can trust, that you respect, that you have a great deal of understanding, and that communication is really, really good, that person can excel your fighting. And that person doesn't have to be me or Duke Sean or Tristan or anybody like that. That could literally be the next best guy at your fight practice, or your buddy who you've been training with the whole time. Because it's emotional based. Or, it might be that you come back and it's like, hey, how do you think I did? And you'd be like, well, I've seen you do better. Here's a couple of things I didn't see you do. Or, hey, your sword looked like it was back 2 inches, or your feet were spread out, But there's a person you trust. Or, you come back to a corner, you're looking a little dejected. That person knows you well enough to say, hey, that may not have been great, but man, you did this thing really well. So let's, he's going to build you back up before you go into that next round. And that's the emotional side of training. And in fact, that's the emotional side of coaching. For the last 3 years, I've been doing a few, there's a known world fight symposium, I think a year or two ago, that I went to, and we did a coaching roundtable. It wasn't me explaining what coaching is. I wanted to talk about coaching. I did another roundtable at Penzic, and there was another place that did roundtable. I want people to start thinking about that coaching feel instead of just, I hear this all the time. Oh, we got to learn to train people better. Well, there's actually a lot of good trainers out there. But when you get somebody passionate about something and build that passion, we know what that can generate. It can generate greatness. And that's what we're trying to get. That's what we're trying to push those people to, because that's what they want. Right? In the end, you get the chance to take a look and say, hey, I helped them get to the place that they really wanted. I helped them get past what they ever thought they could. I mean, that's hugely satisfying, not only for them, but for you too, because by then you're really that emotional piece. It's not just, feeling his emotion, but you got a bond that's going on at that point too. And sometimes it's, sometimes it's maybe, that father-son or father-daughter bond that's unbreakable, or maybe it's that best friend bond, but you're both getting rewarded out of it because they give you that trust, and that's an incredible gift that they give you. In fact, we were talking, and somebody brought up, Eli, in fact, brought up earlier about bringing the empty cup to learn. Sean was talking about one of his students has incredible martial arts background, came in, is like, teach me. He didn't know that he's, been training for years and years and years, and a great practitioner. The guy came in and said, teach me. I'm a white belt. Just teach me. Well, that's in our group, obviously, white people need something a little different, but that's a gift, because that's really, really hard to give up, especially when you spend that many years with something. And I'm going to tell you, every one of these guys up, and myself included, we know that's a gift, and we really appreciate that. And so what I would say is, be a great student, build that layer of trust with somebody, so that somebody can essentially help you on your path and motivate you to maybe even go past where you ever thought you could. And you'll feel good. And it doesn't mean that you have to win everything. It means that, I never thought I was going to fight in tournaments before. I was a great melee guy, but now I feel good about fighting in tournaments. I have a chance. Well, there's a place that you're going to that you never thought you would be before. And these are the kind of things we can help each other with. And we can also help each other with just being, hey, are you going to be at practice today? Because I really like to work on something. And that's that responsibility back to each other. And that's what keeps people coming up somewhere. So I'm going to leave it off on that, so we can get it looks like we're dead on 8. Vespar, maybe a question or two, or are we going to be pretty much up?
We do have a question.
Okay.
How do we transition along the path from training or teaching into becoming a good coach?
So first thing I would say is there's that place where you have to, there's all that place where you have to build that relationship with somebody. You have to build that trust. And that trust may start, like, hey, and it's always an edgy piece. You first want to make sure that somebody else isn't already training and helping somebody. And if they are, go to that person that's helping them, say, hey, they're looking really good. you know, maybe can we work on something like this, and build that trust not only between that student but also the person that's helping them. And if they don't have somebody helping them, give them some things to work on, build that trust, and then that trust, they'll start coming to you. Tell them, communicate. Communication is the fundamental to this. Tell them, anytime you want it, I am more than happy to give you my time. I tell people that all the time. And that includes people. I have a wonderful student, Earl Wilfrick, that was in Drachenval. He was already an Earl. He was my student. We did video, and he shot video for 3 years. And I've had a lot of great students, but I've never did it from that range. And after 3 years, he got knighted over there, and he fights my style. We spent all kinds of time just talking on Facebook and filming and sending stuff back and forth. It was a great experience for me, incredible learning experience. And the best part is, you know, somebody said it earlier, you become a master at something once you start teaching it and start coaching it, because you start feeling it and you get to that spiritual place. Mm-hmm. And you know, all I can say is build that trust first, and it has to be real trust, and respect that person for what they give you, and they'll respect you back.
Yeah, if I could jump in with one thing too, and I've noticed this very strong parallel not only in the the traditional martial art world, but also in the SCA. When you start, you get into a major gear of every time you go to a practice, every time you go to class, your focus is on, and intent is on building your own skill. Like, you are almost a total narcissist. I need to be better. I need to improve this. I need to work on that. Here are what my weaknesses that I have. Like, these are the things that fill your mind, and usually for years. But in order to cross over into being a coach, you have to totally shift gears and put the priority on your student. You have to give up on I'm here for me. I'm here for what I can do and what I can learn, and turn it around and say, I'm here for what they can learn. And even if you got one person you work with, or 5 or 10, doesn't matter. You have to put you aside and make them the priority. And not to do it from the fact of, well, I'm a big shot fighter, or I'm a sensei, and I need to pretend to play my role because that's what I should be doing. I'm talking very earnest. Like, you have to put the priority and success of your students as your number one goal. Maybe it's only half a practice you do that. You do the first half for you, but when you shift gears, and this has to be a very distinct and clear shift of gears, and it has to come across completely clearly in order to gain the trust that Brannos is talking about. You can't have your student think, well, this guy's just over here kind of showing off and teaching me because he wants to look to everybody like a teacher in front of everybody else. It has to be, you really care. You want that person to walk away from you knowing something they couldn't do before, or understand something they didn't understand before. Like, and as a dojo owner, that's my priority in a class. Whenever somebody comes in, I want them leaving thinking they're better than they were when they walked in the door. And I think
that's well said.
If the SCA had that same atmosphere at every practice, it would be a whole different ball of wax. You know, there are practices that are great for it and really do that. There are others where it's just a bunch of guys and gals that are just there for themselves, and you can tell. I mean, the atmosphere will drip off the walls, and it won't bring people back. It won't make people want to be there because they feel like everybody's there for themselves, and it doesn't leave them much, especially raw beginners.
And if I can add one more thing, if someone, in the question, they're fighting with someone of lesser skill and they're thinking, should I start teaching them? I'd say the simple question to ask the person is, hey, can I show you something? I've noticed something. Is it okay with you if I show you something? Get the permission first of the person you're helping to teach, because without their agreement, without their buy-in to that, then you're pushing your knowledge or what you think you know on them. Instead, if you ask them and they can say no, I just want to fight. Say, go, fine, let's just do that. But if you ask someone, hey, I know something, can I help? I don't John, if I see two people fighting, for example, if I don't just walk over and start correcting them, I'll stand and watch for a while. And if they turn to me, I may say, hey, do you mind if I point out something I saw? Now I can get away with doing that. And maybe somebody who can't always do that. The first thing is ask their agreement to offer information. And then they can if they agree, great. You can share with them.
Well said. Sean, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do actually. So as far as the transition from fighter to coach, we expect all members of the chivalry, all knights and masters, we're trainers. We're supposed to teach fighting. The level of training that the four of us do is beyond what is ordinarily expected. And I have trained I've done my fighting clinic in more than half of the kingdoms of the known world. And, I occasionally get asked that question. It's like, well, that seems like a pretty good gig. People fly you out to places to teach them how to fight. And, how do you get into that? And my answer to that has always been that you don't get into this business. You kind of end up in this business. We all as knights will help whoever is going to ask. And, eventually you get that point where I know for me, it was, 2007 or thereabouts. And somebody said, man, this is really great stuff. What can I do to get a weekend with you? And then I set up a class down in Vegas, did that for a few years. And then one of those classes, somebody said, what does it take you? What would it take to get you to my house to teach this? And, I went out to somebody's house and taught this. And, you help enough people and it's effective. You just kind of end up in this. And I am incredibly blessed to have fallen into this. I got a lot of my training methodology and the concept of training from Viscount Sir Sagan, originally of the West, now here in Artemesia, and that has really really kind of carried me on as far as how I train and and the value of that. But getting back to Tristan's point, when you get that text or that email from a guy that says, "I just won crown, thanks for your help," I mean, I've had plenty of success for myself. And being able to give that success to other people and helping them find the kind of joy that I have of this sport for so long. And quite frankly, it's just me being able to give back to so many people that have given so much to me. Because I remember when I was coming up in my way and just hungry and eager and trying to learn, and all the people that helped me. I feel like I owe it to the society at large to help out where I can, and watching people have success with what I've given them is far greater than any success I could have for myself at this point.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%.
Could I jump in with one last thing? And I think this is a great wrap-up point, and that is you get better at what you practice, pure and simple. If you go to practice and all you do is fight and spar and train yourself, that's what you're going to be good at. You won't be good at teaching because you're not practicing it. So take time out, even though you feel like you're clumsy. And this is one of the things that my Aikido instructor told me, because I always got shy about teaching things that I felt were beyond what I knew how to do, which is, of course, teaching 101. Don't teach outside of your knowledge base. And of course, when you're not yet a black belt and you're you got a student that you're working with that's struggling, you're like, I don't know if I should show them anything because I'm not really good enough at it. And he always said, if you know one thing, teach that one thing. If you can give them one thing to help, it's going to be better than if you just stood there and did not help them at all. As you do that, you're kind of getting your legs underneath you as a teacher. You're starting to learn what it is to be a coach and a mentor. And then you're going to stumble, you're going to struggle, I guarantee you're going to teach somebody to do something wrong. It's going to happen. So get over it and do your best, and just be honest with the student. And this happens, I think, more there's more concern about this in the traditional martial arts, where it's like, I don't want to teach something that's wrong, and I need to make sure that if I'm an instructor, I'm perfect, and I never, show any weakness in front of my students. I've taken an entirely different approach and say, I'm a human being. I'm flawed. If I'm going to teach you something today, tomorrow I could have find something that's better, and I'm going to teach you that. What I show you today could change. So look at your teaching skill like its own set of skills that's separate from your fighting. Don't think of, oh, I'm a really good fighter, therefore automatically I'm a really good teacher, because that won't ever happen. You need, and to address the concern, the question that somebody had for Sean about, well, how do I get into coaching? Practice. Just practice it. Get with more and more people and get better as a coach. And then that's why we wanted to put this together, this train the trainer roundtable type approach, where we can share with you things that experienced coaches have learned that's effective for getting their students to those higher levels of excellence quickly. Because why not share all this wealth of knowledge that we've gathered individually and kind of helped each other with? Why don't we get a place where people can come together and learn from that experience? Like the internet can let us do that, and that's kind of what this whole thing is starting.
Tristan, thank you a ton. I think you're 100% right. I think that as a wrap up and is really, really to the point. And earlier I said that we're all here for everybody that's listening. And I think everybody, each one of these gentlemen have said it over and over again, that they're more than willing to take questions and talk. And, some of that might be even, hey, send me a video or, I'll give you a review, or, and I do this all the time. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But, reach out. And if you guys want more of this, please let us know, because each one of us would love to come, maybe even present a little bit on our own, or we'd just love to come and just take questions for an hour. I think when we get together and just talk on, we use Zoom a bit, we get together and we'll go an hour, hour and a half, just kind of throwing stuff back and forth. Yeah. So, and we'd be happy to talk with folks. So just let us know. And one way or the other, look for stuff coming from us later. We were just starting to put some more resources together for everybody, so that you can go somewhere and find those resources to help you become a better trainer or a better coach, because we really do want to get out there and help everyone. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Let us know. Best part, you're wonderful, and thank you for putting this all together.
Thank you.
All right.
And we look forward to working with you again.
Wonderful. Have a wonderful
Definitely.
evening, and thank you everybody for watching. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right.